The massive training arena of the Galactic Combat Academy hummed with energy. Neon lights illuminated every corner of the facility, with holographic displays projecting data across multiple zones designated for different cadet groups. The air smelled of antiseptic and sweat, a testament to the thousands of beings that trained within its walls daily. In the far corner of Training Zone 9, where the lighting seemed deliberately dimmer than the rest of the arena, sat a small figure, cross-legged on the floor. Lyra Santos kept her eyes closed, breathing slowly and deliberately. Her slight frame was almost lost in the oversized training uniform that hung loosely around her shoulders. Unlike the other cadets who strutted, stretched, and boasted loudly of their combat prowess, she remained perfectly still, seemingly meditating amidst the chaos. It was the first day at the academy, the morning of the advanced combat induction phase, and tension filled the air as cadets from across the galaxy sized each other up. The arena was divided into training zones, each filled with a different species group. The towering Krell, with their chitinous exoskeletons, dominated Zone 1, while the agile Jigzari twins occupied Zone 3, their four arms moving in perfect synchronization as they practiced combat forms. The brutish Dorvians in Zone 4 pounded their chests, their elongated limbs a blur as they demonstrated their fighting prowess. The reptilian Zenthi in Zone 5 hissed threats at one another, scales glistening under the lights. The predatory Traxians in Zone 7 circled each other like apex hunters, and the imposing Crixians in Zone 8 performed their ritualistic combat dances with military precision. And then there was Zone 9, the miscellaneous zone, the zone for species not numerous or prestigious enough to warrant their own training area, the zone where Lyra sat, the only human in the entire academy. She had no confidence in her physical form compared to the other species. How could she? The smallest Krell cadet stood nearly 3 meters tall, while the average Dorvian could bench press a small transport vehicle. Even the Jigzari, considered relatively frail by galactic standards, possessed natural armor that could deflect most projectiles. But Lyra had faith in her skills. Years of training on Earth, a planet whose gravity was 1.5 times the Academy standard, had honed her anti-gravity techniques to perfection. She didn't need to be the strongest or the fastest. She just needed to understand how gravity affected motion and how to use it against her opponents. As she meditated, she could hear the tense whispers of the other Zone 9 cadets, a collection of beings from lesser-known worlds. They gave her a wide berth, unsure what to make of the quiet human girl who hadn't spoken a word since arrival. "What's she doing? Just sitting there?" whispered a three-eyed Vidian cadet named Corvix. "Humans are weird," replied a gelatinous Tekka. "I heard they sleep a third of their lives away. Maybe she's sleeping with her eyes open." "I heard humans are fragile as glass," added a slender Pim, one of the Jigzari twins who had wandered over from Zone 3. "One good hit and they shatter." "They're from some backwater world," his identical brother Palm chimed in. "Class 9 planet. Barely worth noticing." Lyra heard it all, but remained motionless. Let them talk. They would learn soon enough. The hollow boom of a staff striking the floor silenced the chatter. Professor Zarlok, a scarred Traxian assassin veteran who served as the Academy's head combat instructor, stood at the center of the arena. His cold, predatory gaze swept across the zones, lingering momentarily on Zone 9. "Cadets," his voice echoed throughout the facility. "Today begins your combat training. Each of you will demonstrate your species' primary combat stance for evaluation. We will begin with Zone 9. A ripple of surprise ran through the arena. Starting with Zone 9 was unusual. Typically, the prestigious species went first. Lyra opened her eyes slowly, her face betraying no emotion as Zarlok approached. "On your feet," he commanded the Zone 9 cadets. "One by one, show me your combat stance." The first cadet, a spindly Gorn with translucent skin, stepped forward and assumed a defensive posture, arms raised to protect its central nervous cluster. Zarlok nodded dismissively and moved on. One by one, the Zone 9 cadets demonstrated their stances, each receiving a cursory evaluation from the instructor. When he reached Lyra, she remained seated. "Cadet," Zarlok growled. "I said demonstrate your combat stance." Lyra looked up at him, her expression serene. "This is my stance, Professor." Murmurs and snickers rippled through the watching cadets. Zarlok's facial ridges darkened in what the other species recognized as anger. "Stand up now." Each word was a barely contained snarl. Slowly, gracefully, Lyra rose to her feet. She stood naturally, arms at her sides, shoulders relaxed, feet shoulder-width apart. She made no combat pose, assumed no guard position. She simply stood. The arena erupted in laughter. "That's not a stance," shouted a lanky Dorvian cadet named GRX from Zone 4. His elongated limbs were folded into what looked like an impenetrable defense. As the reigning planetary champion in unarmed combat, GRX had a reputation that preceded him to the academy. "She's just standing there. What a joke!" Zarlok turned to the Dorvian, eyes narrowing. "Cadet Gryrex, since you're so eager to comment, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate the superiority of your stance against the humans. Approach." The Dorvian's 4 eyes widened in delight. "With pleasure, Professor." He strode confidently into Zone 9, towering over Lyra by at least a meter. The other cadets gathered around, forming an impromptu arena. Wagers were already being exchanged. How quickly would the human be defeated? Would she even survive one hit from the champion? "This won't take long," GRX sneered, looking down at Lyra. "Ready to be humiliated, Earthling?" Lyra said nothing. She simply stood, her posture unchanged, her breathing steady. "Begin!" Zarlok commanded. GRX moved with astonishing speed for his size, launching into a spinning attack that had won him countless matches on his homeworld. His elongated right arm whipped around in an arc that would strike Lyra's midsection with bone-crushing force. The watching cadets held their breath, many unable to watch what would surely be a devastating impact. But the impact never came. In a motion so subtle it was nearly imperceptible. Lyra shifted her weight slightly, angling her shoulder a fraction to the left. As GRX's arm came within centimeters of her body, she extended her leg in a precise movement that seemed to ride the gravity directly into GRX's side. The Dorvian's momentum carried him forward, but now off balance, sending him face first into the training mat. The arena fell silent. GRX lay, sprawled on the ground, confusion evident in all 4 of his eyes. What happened?" he stammered, pushing himself up. "You didn't even move. You just stood there." Lyra remained in her neutral stance, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I moved exactly as much as necessary. No more, no less." Zarlok's expression was unreadable as he announced, "Match to the human." A collective gasp went up from the assembled cadets. Corvix, the Vidian, blinked all 3 of his eyes in rapid succession. "If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I'd think she manipulated gravity itself." GRX scrambled to his feet, rage contorting his features. "That was a fluke! A lucky dodge!" "Perhaps," Zarlok said coolly. "Or perhaps there is more to the human's technique than is immediately apparent." He gestured to the next cadet in line, a bulky Zenthi named Rekar. "You, test her stance." Rekar was the top recruit among the Zenthi, renowned for his regenerative skin and rock-solid build. He moved forward with confidence, eyeing Lyra as if she were a particularly soft morsel to be devoured. "My skin repairs itself instantly," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking between razor-sharp teeth. "Even if you manage another lucky move, you cannot harm me." Lyra remained silent, standing in the same relaxed position. "Begin!" Zarlok commanded again. Raykar attacked with a low, sweeping kick, designed to knock Lyra off her feet, followed immediately by a powerful shoulder thrust. Unlike GRX's singular attack, this was a combination that had been perfected over generations of Zenthi combat evolution. Yet again, Lyra barely seemed to move. She shifted her back slightly as the gravity changed, and when Raykar committed to his shoulder thrust, she used her palm to guide his momentum, applying a lightning-fast joint lock that sent the Zenthi spinning to the ground. Raykar tried to rise but found himself unable to regain his footing. "What is this?" he snarled. "Some kind of trickery?" "No trickery," Lyra replied softly. "Just physics. Gravity is constant, but how we interact with it isn't." The watching cadets were now silent, all eyes fixed on the small human female who had effortlessly dispatched two of the most formidable fighters in the academy without appearing to exert herself at all. "Impossible," whispered Palm, the Jigsaw twin. "She barely moved." "Gravity manipulation," his brother Pym suggested. "Some kind of telekinesis?" Corvix edged closer to Lyra, curiosity overcoming his initial dismissiveness. "What do you call that technique?" Before Lyra could answer, a buzz of conversation swept through the arena as cadets began sharing information through their neural links. "Deathworlder," the whisper spread from cadet to cadet. "She's from a Deathworld." The revelation sent a chill through the assembly. Deathworlds were planets with environmental conditions so harsh that most galactic species considered them uninhabitable. High gravity, extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, aggressive predators. Surviving on such worlds required evolutionary adaptations that often resulted in terrifyingly efficient killing machines. And Earth, it seemed, had been misclassified in the Academy records. It wasn't a Class 9 planet at all. Zarlok's eyes narrowed as he accessed the Academy database through his neural implant. His facial ridges paled as he read the classified information that few instructors were privy to. "Earth," he announced, his voice carrying across the now silent arena, "is a Class 12 Deathworld. The highest classification, the most dangerous category of planet known to the Galactic Alliance." The atmosphere in the arena changed instantly. Cadets backed away from Zone 9, eyeing Lyra with newfound fear and respect. Even GRX and Raykar, nursing their wounded pride, kept their distance. "The final test," Zarlok declared, his voice echoing ominously. "Cadet Lyra Santos will face Dross, Crixian Grand Champion, and the youngest ever to claim the Crixian crown." Gasps and murmurs filled the arena. The Crixians were known throughout the galaxy as elite warriors, and Dross was their brightest star. Putting a first-year cadet against him, even a Deathworlder, seemed almost cruel. "Professor, this is highly irregular," protested one of the Crixian observers, who had been watching from the sidelines. "Dross is here as a cultural ambassador. This could jeopardize our diplomatic relations if—" "If what?" Zarlok interrupted. "If your champion loses to a human?" His eyes gleamed with a predatory light. "Or are you concerned that the rumors about Deathworlders might be true?" The Crixian fell silent, his exoskeletal plates clicking in agitation. Lyra showed no reaction to the announcement. She remained in her relaxed stance, breathing steadily, focused inward. Around her, the other cadets whispered furiously, placing new wagers on how long she would last against the legendary Dross. "Corvix," she said quietly, addressing the Vidian who still stood nearby. "What do you know about Crixian physiology?" Startled at being addressed directly, Corvix blinked rapidly. Exoskeletal carapace, enhanced strength, 4 primary joint clusters, highly resistant to blunt force trauma." He paused. "But their tertiary spinal junction is vulnerable. Not that anyone has ever been able to exploit it. It's too well protected by their combat stance." Lyra nodded slightly. "Thank you." The arena was quickly reconfigured for the special match. A circular combat mat was established at the center, surrounded by an energy barrier to protect the spectators. Academy officials and Crixian dignitaries took positions around the perimeter, along with the entire cadet class. Dross entered the arena to thunderous applause, standing nearly 2.5 meters tall, with gray-blue Delta region skin and a reinforced exoskeleton visible beneath his ceremonial combat garb. He was an imposing figure. He acknowledged the crowd with a curt nod before fixing his compound eyes on Lyra. "Earth soft," he growled, using the derogatory term for humans that had spread through the academy. "You bring confidence to death, yes?" His translator struggled with the complex Crixian dialect, rendering his speech somewhat stilted. "Show me this worth." Lyra walked calmly to her position on the mat, still maintaining her relaxed stance. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself, then opened them to meet Dross's gaze steadily. Zarlok raised his hand. "This match will continue until submission or incapacitation. Academy medical staff are standing by." He looked from Dross to Lyra. "Begin." Dross moved with startling speed for his size, charging directly at Lyra with his armored shoulder lowered like a battering ram. It was a straightforward attack, too straightforward for a fighter of his caliber, clearly designed to test Lyra's reactions. As he closed the distance, Lyra gently lowered her center of gravity and used her gravity guidance technique to redirect Dross's momentum. Instead of absorbing or avoiding the impact, she subtly shifted the point of contact, causing the Crixian to stumble past her and outside the mat's boundary. Dross recovered quickly, turning to face her with newfound respect in his compound eyes. "Not luck," he chittered. "Technique." He reassumed his fighting stance, more cautious now. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation as Dross circled Lyra, looking for an opening. She rotated smoothly to keep facing him, but otherwise maintained her relaxed posture, arms loose at her sides. Dross launched a second attack, this time a complex series of strikes targeting multiple areas simultaneously, a technique that had overwhelmed countless opponents in the past. His upper limbs struck at Lyra's head, while his lower limbs swept toward her ankles. Lyra responded with a fluid economy of movement, combining a slight duck with a double leg push technique that caught Dross in mid-motion. She redirected his momentum and added a precise joint lock to his shoulder, simultaneously twisting to apply pressure to his third vertebral junction, exactly where Corvix had indicated a weakness might exist. The sound that emerged from Dross's mandibles was like nothing the cadets had ever heard, a high-pitched keening that cut through the arena. The mighty Crixian champion found himself immobilized, his most vulnerable point expertly pinned by the small human female. Lyra maintained the hold, applying just enough pressure to demonstrate her control without causing permanent damage. "Submit," she said quietly. Dross struggled briefly, his powerful limbs thrashing as he attempted to break free. But each movement only increased the pressure on his vulnerable joint. After several seconds of futile resistance, he went limp. "Yield!" he gasped, his respiratory system clearly under strain. "I yield!" Lyra immediately released him and stepped back, resuming her neutral stance. The arena was deathly quiet for a long moment, then erupted into chaos as cadets and officials alike tried to process what they had just witnessed. Zarlok raised his hand for silence, eventually getting the commotion under control. "The match goes to Cadet Lyra Santos of Earth," he announced formally. "She is hereby recognized as a combat master representing the Academy." The Crixian dignitaries looked ashen, their exoskeletal plates clicking rapidly in agitation. One of them approached Lyra and performed a deep bow, a gesture of immense respect in Crixian culture. "We have underestimated humans," the dignitary admitted, mandibles twitching. "The Alliance has much to learn from Earth techniques." Lyra returned the bow respectfully. "We have much to learn from each other," she replied diplomatically. Zarlok dismissed the assembly but requested Lyra's presence in the command staff's private briefing room. As the arena slowly emptied, cadets gave her a wide berth, eyeing her with a mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. Corvix lingered behind, waiting until most had left before approaching her. "That was enlightening," he said, his three eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of deep thought among Vidians. "I've never seen anything like it." "It's called gravity guidance on Earth," Lyra explained, relaxing slightly now that the demonstrations were over. "We don't fight against gravity, we work with it. Every movement creates changes in gravitational distribution. If you understand those changes, you can use them to your advantage." "But Earth's gravity is much stronger than standard, isn't it? How does that help?" Lyra smiled. "When you grow up having to constantly resist 1.5 times the gravity you feel here, you develop an intuitive understanding of force distribution. Every Earthling learns it from childhood. How to move efficiently, how to conserve energy, how to redirect momentum rather than oppose it directly." Corvix considered this. "So, when the others attacked you, they brought their own defeat with them," Lyra finished. "All that force, all that momentum. I just helped it go somewhere they didn't expect." "Will you? Would you be willing to teach some of these techniques?" Corvix asked hesitantly. Before Lyra could answer, a message flashed on her Academy communicator, summoning her to the briefing room. "We'll talk later," she promised Corvix. "I think there's going to be a lot of interest in Earth techniques after today." The command briefing room was austere and functional, dominated by a large holographic display showing various Academy training metrics. Zarlok waited alongside several senior staff members and what appeared to be Alliance military officials. "Cadet Santos," Zarlok acknowledged as she entered. "Your demonstration today has raised significant questions. Earth has been deliberately misclassified in our records." "I'm aware," Lyra replied calmly. One of the Alliance officials, a stern-looking Traxian admiral, leaned forward. "You knew? It's not exactly a secret on Earth that the Alliance downplays our capabilities," Lyra said. "We understand the reasoning. Other species find it unsettling that beings from such a high-gravity world might be walking among them. Better to pretend we're weaker than we are." "Until today," Zarlok noted dryly. "That option is no longer available to us." "What exactly did we witness today?" asked another official, a Vidian with ceremonial markings indicating high scientific rank. "Some form of telekinesis? Gravity manipulation technology?" Lyra shook her head. "Nothing so exotic. Just the application of physics principles that any human child learns. We call it gravity guidance or force efficiency. It's not about opposing force, it's about redirecting it." "And this is common knowledge on Earth?" the Admiral asked skeptically. "It's practically instinctual," Lyra confirmed. "When you evolve on a world with our gravity, you either learn to work with it, or you expend enormous energy fighting against it. Natural selection favored efficiency." The officials exchanged troubled glances. The implications were clear. If every human possessed similar capabilities, the balance of power in the Alliance might need re-evaluation. "We would like you to develop a training program," Zarlok stated. "Selected cadets from various species will learn these Earth techniques. The knowledge should be shared." Lyra nodded. "I'd be happy to. Though I should warn you, species from lower gravity worlds will find it challenging. It requires a fundamental shift in how you conceptualize movement." "But it can be taught?" pressed the Vidian scientist. "The principles can be taught," Lyra clarified. "Mastery will vary based on physical capabilities and neural adaptation." After the meeting concluded, Lyra returned to her dormitory in the Zone 9 residential block. Unlike the communal sleeping arrangements of most cadets, humans had been granted private quarters due to their unusual sleep requirements, Another diplomatic fiction that allowed the Alliance to accommodate the Deathworlders without acknowledging their true status. Sitting cross-legged on the floor near her window, Lyra resumed her meditation posture, gazing out at the stars. Earth was not visible from this part of the galaxy, but she could see the general direction of the Sol system, a small patch of space that had produced a species the galaxy was only beginning to understand. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. When she opened it, Korvix stood there, hands clasped in the formal gesture of respect that Vidians reserved for teachers. "Thank you for opening our eyes about humans," he said softly. Lyra smiled. "I didn't do it to prove a point. I just did what came naturally." "That's what makes it so remarkable," Korvix replied. "What seems extraordinary to us is simply everyday reality for you." He hesitated. "The others are talking. Many want to learn. Not just the Zone 9 cadets, but cadets from all zones." "Even Giorex and Rakar?" Lyra asked with a raised eyebrow. "Especially them," Korvix confirmed with a twitching smile. "Defeat is a powerful motivator." Lyra nodded. "Tell them I'll begin instruction tomorrow after regular classes. Everyone is welcome." After Korvix left, Lyra returned to her meditation by the window. She reflected on the day's events and what they meant for Earth's place in the galactic community. For generations, humans had been underestimated, their Deathworld origins concealed behind bureaucratic classifications and diplomatic language. Perhaps it was time for that to change. "Just stand still long enough," she murmured to herself, repeating an old Earth proverb her teacher had shared. "And let gravity and logic do the rest." The next morning, the Academy training schedule displayed a significant change. A new holographic announcement appeared throughout the facility. Earth Combat Techniques, Special Instruction by Combat Master Santos. The image accompanying it showed Lyra in her characteristic relaxed stance, a small smile on her face, with the caption, "The Deathworlder will teach us the unimaginable." As cadets from all species gathered for the first lesson, Lyra stood at the center of the training mat, eyes closed, perfectly still. When she opened them to survey her new students, she saw not fear or resentment, but genuine curiosity and respect. "The first lesson," she announced to the hushed assembly, "is learning to stand still." 3 weeks after Lyra's demonstration, a Galactic Alliance diplomatic vessel arrived at the Academy. On board was a delegation of senior officials, including representatives from Earth, the first time humans had been invited to participate at such a high level. Zarlok summoned Lyra to his office, where she found him reviewing footage of her training sessions with the other cadets. The results had been mixed but promising. Some species adapted more quickly than others to the principles of gravity guidance. "Your methods are effective," Zarlok acknowledged, shutting down the holographic display. "The Krell in particular seem well suited to your techniques. Their exoskeletons give them excellent leverage points," Lyra explained, "and they're already accustomed to managing their body weight efficiently." Zarlok nodded. "The Alliance delegation wishes to observe a demonstration. They're particularly interested in the combat applications, but I've informed them that your techniques extend beyond mere fighting." "They're about efficiency in all movement," Lyra agreed. "Combat is just the most obvious application." The demonstration was scheduled for the following day in the Academy's Grand Ceremonial Hall. Cadets from each species who had shown aptitude for the Earth techniques would perform alongside Lyra, showcasing how the principles could be adapted to different physiologies. That evening, as Lyra prepared in her quarters, a priority message arrived on her communicator. It was from Admiral Jackson, the senior human representative in the Alliance delegation, and, though few knew it, her uncle. "Lyra," the message began, "what you've accomplished has accelerated our timetable considerably. The Alliance Council is finally ready to acknowledge Earth's true classification. This will open doors that we've been trying to access for generations. Your demonstration tomorrow needs to emphasize not just combat efficiency, but the broader applications of gravity guidance. Show them that humans aren't just warriors. We're builders, healers, creators. Make them understand that our strength comes from working with natural forces, not dominating them. Lyra sent a brief acknowledgement and returned to her preparations. Uncle Jackson was right. This was about more than fighting techniques. It was about changing perceptions, about showing the galaxy that Deathworlders weren't monsters to be feared, but potential partners with unique perspectives. The ceremonial hall was filled to capacity the next morning. Alliance officials occupied the front rows, with Academy staff and select cadets filling the remaining seats. At the center of the hall, a large circular stage had been prepared, surrounded by holographic projectors that would allow the audience to see details of the demonstrations from any angle. Lyra entered the stage alone, wearing the simple Earth training garments she preferred, loose-fitting pants and a tunic that allowed full range of movement without distraction. She assumed her characteristic relaxed stance and waited as the hall fell silent. Delegates of the Galactic Alliance, Academy staff, fellow cadets, she began, her voice calm but carrying clearly throughout the hall. What you will see today is not unique to me. It is the birthright of every human from Earth, a fundamental understanding of how to work with gravity rather than against it. She gestured, and her first group of students entered the stage, a mixed collection including Corvix, a Krell named Tekka, and surprisingly, GRX the Dorvian. They formed a circle around her, each assuming the modified version of her stance that best suited their physiology. The principles are universal, Lyra continued, but the application varies based on physical structure. What works for a human may not work for a Krell, and vice versa. The key is understanding your own center of gravity and how it interacts with the world around you. What followed was a carefully choreographed demonstration of increasingly complex movements. First, simple redirections of force. One cadet would attack, and another would guide the momentum away with minimal effort. Then, combinations of movements, showing how multiple opponents could be managed simultaneously. Finally, practical applications beyond combat. A Krell demonstrating how the principles improved their ability to manipulate delicate scientific equipment. A Jigsaw showing enhanced climbing efficiency. A Vidian displaying improved balance while operating complex machinery. Throughout it all, Lyra provided calm narration, explaining the physics behind each technique and how it related to Earth's high-gravity environment. The Alliance delegates watched with intense interest, particularly a group of military officials who were furiously taking notes. For the finale, Lyra had planned something special. The lights dimmed, and holographic projections appeared around the stage, showing various landscapes from Earth, mountains, oceans, forests, cities. In each scene, humans could be seen moving with the characteristic efficiency that came from growing up on a death world. This is not just a fighting style, Lyra explained, as the images played. It's a way of being. Humans don't see gravity as an enemy to overcome. We see it as a partner in everything we do. That perspective, learning to work with natural forces rather than against them, has applications far beyond the training mat. The final hologram showed Earth itself, a beautiful blue-green sphere against the blackness of space. Earth is indeed a Class 12 death world, Lyra acknowledged. But that designation reflects only the challenges of our home, not the character of its people. We are not conquerors. We are adapters. We don't wish to dominate the galaxy. We wish to contribute to it, bringing our unique perspective to the challenges we all face together. As the lights came back up, there was a moment of profound silence. Then, thunderous applause. The Alliance delegates rose to their feet, joined by the Academy staff and cadets. Even the Crixian representatives, initially so concerned about their champion's defeat, were applauding enthusiastically. Admiral Jackson approached the stage, pride evident in his eyes, though his face maintained diplomatic neutrality. Combat Master Santos, he said formally. On behalf of Earth and the human delegation, I thank you for this demonstration. You have done your species a great service today. Zarlok joined them, addressing the assembly. The techniques demonstrated today will be incorporated into the Academy curriculum for all cadets, adapted as necessary for different physiologies. Combat Master Santos will oversee this integration, with assistance from the cadets who have already begun training. The announcement was met with more applause. As the formal proceedings concluded and the delegates began to mingle, Lyra found herself surrounded by cadets from all zones, each eager to discuss specific aspects of the demonstration or ask questions about Earth. Corvix managed to make his way through the crowd to stand beside her. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. "Not just combat training. The way they see humans." "It's a start," Lyra agreed. "But perceptions don't change overnight. There will still be those who fear what they don't understand." "True," Corvix acknowledged. "But fear based on ignorance can be cured with knowledge, and you've given them plenty to think about." Later that evening, as the Academy settled into its night cycle, Lyra returned to her favorite spot by the window in her quarters. The stars seemed especially bright tonight, the direction of Earth a little easier to pinpoint. A message appeared on her communicator, a formal notification from the Alliance Council. Earth's classification had been officially updated in all public records, no longer hidden behind diplomatic language and bureaucratic classifications. It now stood proudly as what it had always been, a Class 12 Deathworld, home to a species whose strength came not from dominance, but from harmony with natural forces. Lyra smiled as she closed the notification. It was a small step, but an important one. The galaxy was beginning to understand that Deathworlders weren't monsters to be feared or weapons to be wielded. They were partners with unique perspectives, shaped by the challenges of their homeworld, but not defined by them. In the training arenas below, she could see cadets practicing after hours, attempting to master the basics of gravity guidance. Some struggled. Their bodies adapted to entirely different gravitational conditions. Others showed promising progress, particularly the Krell, whose natural physiology gave them advantages in certain techniques. Dross, the Crixian champion, was among them. His defeat had not diminished his status. If anything, it had enhanced it. He had faced a Deathworlder at her own game and survived to tell the tale. Now he was determined to learn from her, to incorporate Earth techniques into the ancient combat traditions of his people. A chime at her door announced another visitor. This time it was Professor Zarlok, his scarred face unreadable as always. "The Alliance military contingent has requested specialized training," he informed her, without preamble. "They believe your techniques could revolutionize their tactical approaches." Lyra considered this carefully. "I'm willing to teach them the principles," she said, "but I want assurances about how the knowledge will be used. Earth techniques are about efficiency and harmony, not dominance or aggression." Zarlok's facial ridges twitched in what might have been a smile. "You sound like a diplomat now, not just a combat instructor." "Perhaps that's what's needed," Lyra replied. "Someone who understands both worlds." "Perhaps," Zarlok agreed. He hesitated, then added, "The Academy Board is considering creating a permanent Earth Studies department. They would like you to head it after graduation." The offer was unexpected. Most human cadets returned to Earth after training, taking their new knowledge of galactic cultures and technologies back home. Few were invited to remain at the Academy, especially in leadership positions. "I would be honored," Lyra said sincerely, "but I need to consult with Earth authorities before accepting." Zarlok nodded. "Of course. The formal offer will come through official channels." He turned to leave, then paused. "You've accomplished something remarkable, Cadet Santos. You've changed how an entire galaxy sees your species. Not through force or threat, but through demonstration and education. It's impressive." After he left, Lyra returned to her meditation. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of misconceptions couldn't be erased by a single demonstration or a recategorization in Alliance records. There would be resistance, fear, perhaps even attempts to restrict human involvement in certain areas of galactic society. But the first step had been taken. The truth was now in the open. Earth was a death world, and humans were Deathworlders. Not monsters, not weapons, just people shaped by their environment, bringing their unique perspective to a diverse galactic community. A soft ping from her communicator indicated a message from Corvix. First official Earth Techniques class tomorrow. Already 30 cadets signed up from all zones. Even GRX is coming, though he pretends it's just to monitor my progress. Lyra smiled as she sent a simple acknowledgement. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to bridge the gap between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. For now, though, she was content to sit quietly by the window, watching the stars and letting gravity do the rest. In the months that followed, Earth Techniques became the most popular elective course at the Academy. Cadets from all species struggled and sweated to master the principles of gravity guidance, with varying degrees of success. The Krell, with their exoskeletons and natural strength, adapted quickly. The Jigsari, with their multiple limbs and inherent agility, found creative applications that even Lyra hadn't considered. The Dorvians, including a now humbled GRX, incorporated elements into their own martial traditions. The Alliance military established a specialized training program under Lyra's supervision, focusing on defensive applications and rescue operations in high-gravity environments. Earth diplomats, led by Admiral Jackson, negotiated new trade agreements and cultural exchanges, leveraging the newfound respect for their Deathworld heritage. Zarlok, impressed by the results, expanded the training program to include other Earth disciplines, not just physical techniques, but philosophical approaches. The Deathworld perspective has value beyond combat, he acknowledged during a staff meeting. Their efficiency principles could improve everything from space station design to resource allocation. And through it all, Lyra continued her own practice, starting each day as she always had, sitting quietly, eyes closed, perfectly centered, understanding gravity, working with it, not against it, finding harmony in the most fundamental force of nature. 6 months after her initial demonstration, a new class of cadets arrived at the Academy. Among them were 5 more humans, the first wave of increased Earth participation in the program. As they were shown to their quarters in what was now designated Earth Block, rather than Zone 9, they passed a large holographic display in the main corridor. It showed Lyra in her characteristic stance, eyes calm and body relaxed, but ready. Beneath it, in multiple galactic languages, were the words that had become something of a mantra throughout the Academy. Stand still. Understand gravity. Let the universe do the work. In her office overlooking the training grounds, Lyra watched the new human cadets as they settled in. They would face their own challenges, their own opportunities to bridge the gap between Earth and the galaxy. But the path had been opened. The truth was known. Humans were Deathworlders. Yes, but that was now a source of interest rather than fear, of respect rather than suspicion. Corvix, now her official assistant in the Earth Studies Department, entered with the day's training schedule. The Crixian Embassy has requested a special demonstration, he reported. They're sending their top combat instructors to learn directly from you. Schedule it for next week, Lyra replied. And make sure to include the meditation basics. They need to understand it's not just about the physical techniques. Corvix nodded, making the notation. By the way, Dross has mastered the third-level redirections. He's adapting them for Crixian physiology in fascinating ways. Invite him to demonstrate for the embassy delegation, Lyra suggested. It will mean more coming from one of their own. As Corvix left to make the arrangements, Lyra returned her gaze to the training grounds. The new human cadets were already attracting curious onlookers from other species. Word had spread quickly. These were Deathworlders, with knowledge and perspectives shaped by one of the most challenging environments in the galaxy. But now, that knowledge was seen as valuable, not threatening. Those perspectives were sought after, not feared. The quiet girl who had sat still in combat class had changed the narrative, not through force or dominance, but through demonstration and education. Lyra smiled as she watched a young human cadet assume the characteristic Earth stance, perfectly still amidst the movement around him. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Earth had always known. True strength comes not from opposing natural forces, but from working in harmony with them. The Deathworlder had indeed taught them the unimaginable, and it had all started with sitting quietly in combat class.